We're learning the Maimer al Kein Karu, Tafshin Yud Gimel, and we're in chapter 3. So we had asked the question at the beginning of the Maimer. The Megillah says that why is this the holiday called Purim? So it's Purim al Shem HaPur, because of the lots that were cast by Haman. And so we asked, why would that be the name of the holiday? And we started to talk about the significance of goyrel, of lots, casting lots. And we explained that lots, that represents a level that's higher than hishtalshelus, right? Higher than reason. So hishtalshelus, when we talk about creation, we use the term hishtalshelus, we mean all of creation. The way God puts himself into a knowable sort of frame in order to start establishing creation. So even when we talk about hishtalshelus, starts with chachma. Right, Chachma is divine wisdom. We're talking about the highest level of the 10 spheres, of the 10 divine attributes. That's how God sort of categorizes himself in a certain way. That's what starts this whole process. So that's Hishtalshelus. We don't just mean creation of the physical world. We mean, in general, this whole idea of God as creator. And so lots come from a higher place than intellect. And as we see, when a person doesn't have a reason to pick one thing over the other, so he casts lots, right? And so he follows something, or he does something that's beyond reason. When his intellect can't give him a reason to do one or the other, so you have that. And so we compared this idea of lots. We said is such a high level that that's why we understand. It's explained that Purim and Yom Kippur are similar. In fact, we said that Yom Kippur is like Purim, meaning that Purim is even higher than Yom Kippur. What's the similarity between them? So we said two things. On Yom Kippur, there was a lot, right? We cast the lots of the two goats. The Kein Gadol, the high priest, cast the lots. One was offered as a sacrifice. The other was sent to Azazel. And the other thing is that on Yom Kippur, it says that the atonement comes lifnei Havaya, before God, right? So the Lifnei Havaya means higher than Havaya. That's how we interpreted it. And so this means that the idea of atonement, Yom Kippur, comes from a level that's higher than Havaya. Havaya is the beginning of Hishtalshelus. As we explained, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yud represents Chachma, so that's the beginning of Hishtalshelus, right? And so higher than the Yud, higher than the name Havaya means higher even than the Yud. And so we're talking about even higher than Chachma. So we see that on Yom Kippur, we have this idea of lots, and we have Lifnei Havaya, higher than Havaya. And the same is true with regard to Purim. On Purim we have lots, the lots that were cast on, in relation to the story of Purim. And also, on Purim we have the idea of being higher than Havaya, because as we explained, the Megillah doesn't have the name Havaya in it. Why? So we explained because Purim, the miracle of Purim is higher, comes from a place that's higher than even the name Havaya, even higher than Havaya. So we have these two similarities. Now, chapter 3, the Rebbe continues explaining this advantage of what's so special about Goyrel, about Lot. So we said already that it's higher than Havaya, it's higher than divine wisdom. And now the Rebbe continues, chapter 3, V'hine Yedua b'maylas HaGoyrel. So we also know, it's known about what is unique about Goyrel, about this Lot, that when we talk about lots, it's not only higher than seichel, than intellect, but it's also higher than will, which is higher than intellect. We've talked many times about the difference between the koiches pnimim and the koiches makifim, the idea of chachma, of wisdom, intellect, emotions, that is internal faculties, and then you have the transcendent ones, which are will, pleasure, right? So we talk about ratzin. Ratzin is higher than intellect. We've discussed this many times, right? So seemingly, up until now, we would say that lots come from higher than chachma. So we would put it sort of in that category of ratzin, right, in that transcendent level. So the Rebbe is saying no, that lots are even higher even than ratzin. Why? Because when a person casts lots, why is he casting lots? He doesn't have any desire. He has two things to choose, right? He has no reason to choose one over the other. He has no emotional attachment to one versus the other, and so he's incapable of choosing, right? So what does he want? He doesn't know what he wants. So what does he do? He casts lots, and he decides that based on whatever comes out, that's what he's going to want. Right? So right now he has A and B. He doesn't want A or B, one more than the other, but he'll cast lots, and now the lot will come out A, and so now he's going to want A. So in other words, his will is going to conform to the lot. Since lots have the capacity to influence a person's will, so it means obviously that it's higher than his will. So the same is true with regards, that's talking about people, human beings, when we cast lots. But how is it in the analog? How is it when we talk about God? So when we talk about that level of godliness that a goyrel relates to, so that's already not divine ratzon will, but it is Baal haratzon, in the one who wants, meaning in the essence of Hashem himself. So now, based on this, that the lots reach a level that's higher even than Ratzin, higher than will. So we can explain the similarity between Yom Kippur and Purim, which on one hand they both have Geirul, on the other hand also both Lifnei Havaya, right, higher than Havaya. So we can understand how these two come together. Seemingly two separate things. There's an idea of Geirul, then there's a thing that's higher than Havaya. So the Rebbe says that they're connected. Why? Where does the name Yud Kei Vav Kei? It starts with a Yud, right? So Yud, we said, is Chachma, but the Yud has a koitz, has a crown on top of the Yud, right? There's a line from which the Yud stems. So that tip, that edge of the Yud, Reimiz ala Ratzon Shalom Chachma, that represents Ratzon, will, which is higher than Chachma. Since the crown of the Yud, that line on top of the Yud, sits up above the Yud, so that represents what's beyond the Yud. What's beyond Chachma is Ratzon, is will. Right? So there's Yud, which is Chachma, and there's Kaitzer Shal Yud, the tip of the Yud, which is Ratzon, higher than. Right? In general, we say, so when we talk about the tip, so it's non-discernible. What is the exact point? The highest level of that point, wherever you're going to get to that point, is not even perceptible. It's not even, so when you talk about Chachma, there's already some kind of existence that's taking place. There's already some kind of a shape and a form. The tip is really beyond it. But so that represents Ratzon. So the fact that we say that Purim and Yom Kippur are higher than Havaya, meaning including the tip of the Yud, who should be a Kippurim, who Hamshachas Vigili Bechinis Baal Ratzon Shalamaylam Ratzon Inyan Geirel. So that's because on Purim and Yom Kippur we have a revelation and we draw from the level of Baal Haratzon, which is higher than Ratzon, from the one who desires, which is higher than his desire. So you have a person, you have his feelings. Higher than that, you have his intellect. Higher than that, you have his will. And higher than that, what do you have? The person himself, as he takes a no definition, the essence. So that's what it means, that on Purim and Yom Kippur, we access Baal Haratzon. Okay? So now that we're saying that Geirul, we see already that Geirul is this idea of lots is a very high level. Lots correspond to the level of godliness that's beyond even divine will. Right? So it's not just that it's beyond a finite sort of creation, right? That's defined creation. It's not only that it's beyond, it's also beyond the transcendent level, beyond Ratzon. Where is it? It's in Baal Haratzon, it's in the essence of Hashem himself. Now that we understand that the Geirul reaches into Hashem himself, now we can understand the connection between Geirul and Yom Kippur and Purim, right? And this idea so we're saying it reaches higher than Havaya. That's where Geirul is. Now we can understand the impact of Geirul on Yom Kippur and Purim. So he says like this, chapter 4. So before chapter 4, let's take a look just at note 24. That when it says Lifnei Havaya, beyond Havaya, it says higher than the level of Havaya. Shahayud hu bechinas chachma v'ratzin. Right? When you say higher than Havaya, we mean even higher than chachma and ratzin, which are represented in the Yud. Kein bechinas Baal Haratzon. We're talking about in the level of Baal Haratzon, the one who desires in the essence of Hashem. So in the star he says l'chayra kavana lahayud v'koytzei. He says Yud. I'm just clarifying. In the Tzemach Tzedek says that Yud is chachma and ratzin. How do you see Yud is chachma? What do you mean Yud is chachma and ratzin? So there notes that Yud, what he implies here is the Yud and the tip of the Yud, both of those things. So that Lifnei Havaya means higher than the Yud and the tip of the Yud, higher than Chachma and Ratzin. Okay, chapter 4. So now we can understand the connection, the interplay here between these two meanings of Yom Kippur, right? Which is, we've been working with one interpretation of what's Yom Kippur? Ki Purim. That Yom Kippur is like Purim. Why is it like Purim? As we said, there's Geirul, there's Lifnei Havaya. But Yom Kippur, simply, what does Kippur mean? Means atonement, kapara, right? So what does Yom Kippur, in the way we're interpreting it, the mystical way of that, it's like Purim, have to do with the actual literal meaning of it, that we're talking about atonement, the Day of Atonement. So he says like this: we can understand that the two interpretations, the two meanings of Yom Kippur. That on this day, on Yom Kippur, all negative things are atoned for. That's what the meaning of Kippurim, right? Kapara. Right, that and also the other one that this day is like Purim. That why is it called Yom Kippur and we call it like Purim? That just as on Purim there is a lot, so too on Yom Kippur there's a lot. Right. So and what does that have to do with each other? So we're saying Yom Kippur is atonement. That's the simple meaning of it. Then we're saying it's like Purim and what's the similarity between Yom Kippur and Purim is just like there's a lot on Purim, there's a lot on Yom Kippur. That also, what is that? Why are we casting lots of Yom Kippur altogether? Right? To even have that similarity, that parallel to Purim. So this is like this. Because the full, true atonement, when we say kapara, when we say kapara, we don't just mean that you're forgiven for your misdeeds. We don't just mean you're not going to get punished for your misdeeds. When we say kapara, we mean that you're completely cleansed of wrongdoing. It's completely cleansed. The whole thing is erased. It's taken off your background of your record. Yeah. So how does that happen? So a person does something that is against God's desire in Torah mitzvahs. Hashem has a desire for Torah mitzvahs, wants us to do mitzvahs, to study Torah, and a person does something against it, right? How is it possible then to undo that? So how is that done? That's because of a drawing from Eirin Seif Baal Haratzin, which is higher than the Ratzon Torah mitzvahs. In other words, God has a desire for Torah mitzvahs. So in that level, God wants a Yid to perform a mitzvah, and the Jew doesn't perform the mitzvah. So now what happens? So now God seemingly would desire him less because he's going against God's desire. So the connection between God and the person is damaged, right? So you could say, you ask for forgiveness and God will forgive you for the sin, but still there's a damage that takes place here, right? You went against that will. When we say that it's completely erased, what does that mean? It means you have to connect to a level which is deeper than even God's desire for Torah mitzvahs. That's how you can erase it. Right? So where is that? There's the Ratzin. Hashem has a Ratzin. That's how Hashem sort of puts himself in a sort of definition as wanting Torah mitzvahs. But then there's Hashem himself, beyond his will. So if you can access that level, here that brings full atonement. We'll have to explain a little bit more soon what that means, but let's keep going. So, it's simple. Okay? Good. Adrab. Let's see.
When you have to machshir a keli, you have to go adar gehefer.
Right.
If you cook, you have to melaben. You have to. Same thing over here.
The problem is.
You go to Bala.
Yes, but it's not as a pashut because ebazei chapt as that dargev the Torah mitzvahs in shnegeh. That would be you could say, so it's not the pshat. That's what I'm saying. It's not so pashut. What does that mean? That you reach a level of Torah, so in Bala Ratzin the Torah mitzvah is not negeh, the Eibush is not. So it's not so whatever.
Nothing's negeh in that level. It's
nothing.
Hashem, yeah.
Okay, so could we say that? You could get you can't say it. Pashtus, it's not something that we should be able to say that there's a level. That's usually the way people you could understand it that way. What are the mechanics of tshuva? Person screws up. So on the level where there's where it matters to Hashem, so it matters. So you have a problem, you have to fix it. So what do? You climb higher to a place where it doesn't matter. So we undo it because it doesn't matter on that level. So it means the higher you go, the less anything you do matters.
You have to go to step 2 before you go to step 1. You have to fix that situation.
Okay. First of all, why? Why? Why do you have to fix it? If there's a place where it doesn't matter, just go straight there where it doesn't matter, and then it doesn't matter. You don't have to fix anything. There's nothing to fix. So it's not so simple. And when we say that it's there's a level where it doesn't make a difference. Chassidus explains fakert that mitzvahs, Torah mitzvahs, the Eibush desire for Torah mitzvahs is rooted in his essence. So if so what does it mean that there's a level where that's higher than his Ratzon for Torah mitzvahs? Okay, let's keep going. Let's see if we have time to get into it before we finish off today. Okay, let's see. So v'zeu da'kesh d'shnei apirushim b'yem kippurim d'zeh shem ha'kippurim hu k'may purim al shem ha'pur hu ha'goyrol hainu shegam b'yem kippurim hu hamshachim mibal ha'ratzon. So now we see why Yom Kippur is connected to Purim. We see these two things. What does Yom Kippur have to do with the fact that it's atonement and it's like Purim? is because on Yom Kippur you draw from Baal Haratzin, from the one who desires, just like Dugmas HaMshachat Purim, like was the case on Purim. And this idea that on Yom Kippur we draw from this level of Geirel, which is, as we said just now, we said it's not only Geirel is higher than Chachma, but it's higher than Ratzin, meaning that Geirel is connected to Baal Haratzin, to the Eibishter, as he's beyond, even higher than his will, right? So this is Hutamu Bir Al Yom Kippurim. The fact that Yom Kippur is like Purim, meaning that we're talking about the level of Baal Haratzin, talking about a level of God as he's beyond even will. So it's because of that Yom Kippur could also be, Kippurim could be atonement. That we can atone for the things that were less savory. So the Purim. Now we can understand also why Purim, the atonement of Purim is higher than the atonement of Yom Kippur. So we have a few things here. So we started by connecting Purim and Yom Kippur. And we said, remember we quoted last week in the last class, we quoted the footnote where we talked about the alumnus about the Tikkun Zohar, but the Torah, it says Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. Okay, so we said that Purim and Yom Kippur are connected, and Yom Kippur is like Purim, and Purim is higher than Yom Kippur, right? What are the similarities? Lots and Lifnei Havaya, higher than Havaya. We explain what are lots and higher than Havaya. What are they? They're also one concept. Higher than Havaya means higher than even Ratzin, divine will, and that is the idea of Geirel. That is what lots is. Yom Kippur is also atonement. How do you get what's the connection between the two? Because it's through reaching this level of Geirel that's higher than the Ratzin, higher than God's will, which is God Himself. It's from there that you can have atonement. So we see that Yom Kippur, Kippurim, and Kapara are connected. They're really the fact that it's Kippurim is the explanation why it's Kapara, why it's atonement. But still, we're saying also that Yom Kippur is merely like Purim. So here they seem to be the same. So he says no, but still, even here, Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. Why? Because the Purim, the atonement that is affected on Purim is higher than the atonement of Yom Kippur. Why? Yom Kippur atones only with tshuva, with repentance. You said before, we have to prepare for to go through step 1 to get to step 2, yeah? But the atonement that happened for the Jews on Purim, the days of Purim, was with joy. Why is it that Yom Kippur is a solemn day? It's a day of atonement. It's a day of fasting. It's a day of repentance. It's a day of asking forgiveness. Whereas on Purim is a day of celebration. Why? Because on Purim that's that's the ultimate. Reaching the ultimate level within this level of Geirel. And we see this in the fact that Purim itself is called Purim. On Yom Kippur, the lots were only a part of it, right? But it's not the main thing. It's a component. But Purim, the whole thing is called Purim. And that we see it in the fact that it's a day of celebration. So therefore, the atonement that's affected on Purim has no limitations. And Yom Kippur is merely like Purim, the Chafadim Bavad merely similar to it. And Yom Kippur only atones with repentance. So within that level of Geirel, when we talk about the Baal HaRatzon, the Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. How do we see the Purim is higher than Yom Kippur? Because on Yom Kippur you need to observe the day properly. It's a difficult day in order to achieve atonement. It needs to be tshuva. Yom Kippur itself doesn't help. It needs tshuva to go along with it. Whereas in Purim it's not a day of tshuva. Purim is a day of joy. About what? Yitzuma Shel Yom Chaper. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the footnotes before we continue. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Let's go back here. It says like this in note 26. Yeah, he says that Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. Yeah, how? So let's note 26. Yeah, Regam Sefer Tafshes and Sefer Tafshes Machal. He says the Yom Kippurim ein mechaper ala kol. It says over there that Yom Kippur doesn't atone for everything. The Ba'avar al Krisus and Mrs. Bezdin, somebody who violates crimes, sins that bring about capital punishment, Gemar Kaparasei Alidei Yisurim. So he can do tshuva and he'll be forgiven, but the ultimate atonement, the ultimate kapara, the ultimate cleansing of it only comes through suffering. And somebody who desecrates God's name, it's even worse. It's through death. And this is all the Gemara, and Rambam brings it the halacha that right. The Gemara talks about, it's a Mishnah. The Mishnah in Yuma says about Yom Kippur, and Alter brings this obviously in Tanya, the beginning of Igeres HaTshuva. This whole list of things that Yom Kippur with certain sins, you have atonement with Yom Kippur without whatever. But the point is that they all have to have tshuva. Purim. And on Purim, what was the sin of Purim? Was that they benefited from the meal of Achashverosh, which is that was an open desecration of God's name, which, as we said before, that Yom Kippur doesn't help with, right? It needs tshuva, it needs or misa. So Yom Kippur wouldn't atone fully for the sin of Nenem Sudas Rasha. It wouldn't atone for that because that was a desecration of God's name. Yom Kippur is not enough to atone for it. And Purim, we find, atoned even for that sin. So we see that the atonement of Purim is more powerful than Yom Kippur. The Rebbe says, wants to point out that it's not just when we say that Purim, the atonement of Purim is greater than the atonement of Yom Kippur, it's not just in terms of the quantity. That there are certain things that Yom Kippur atones for, and certain things it doesn't, and Purim atones for everything. So there are more things that it atones for. He's saying here that the atonement itself is a greater form of, the atonement is a greater form of atonement than even on Yom Kippur. Yep, note 27, which we have to say. So he says Yom Kippur is only atones for with tshuva, and you said, we know the things it doesn't, right? So there's the machlekes. So Rebbe says that the day itself atones, right, even without tshuva. So he says, note 27, Yuma, right? He says where it talks about this whole that this whole thing is discussed in the Gemara, and he says like this: the Tesis Yishenim there on Gemara and Yuma says that even he got a whole long thing about discussing Rebbe's position that Yom Kippur itself atones. He brings proofs that even according to Rebbe, it's not the ultimate form of atonement. It's forgiveness maybe, but not. Even according to Rebbe, you still need tshuva. Certain things, yeah. He talks about over there the fact that the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. Even if they did tshuva, why would that still have to happen? They went through a Yom Kippur in the process. It should have been the end of it. They had Yom Kippur and it's over. So there are things that doesn't fully atone. So he's saying that even according to Rebbe, who says that even that the day itself atones, but it's not so simple. It doesn't completely atone, right? You still need tshuva. Okay. Note 29. We said that with Purim is a day, the atonement is without any limitations, right? It's the day itself, the celebration and the joy of Purim brings about full atonement. The Rebbe says, here inside we're saying here in the Maimer that it's just the day itself. You celebrate Purim and there's atonement that happens. But in Torah it seems that the atonement wasn't just celebration of Purim, it was also Mesiras Nefesh. On Purim they had Mesiras Nefesh. That's what brought about the atonement. So the Rebbe says, Yeshleimar, so she'ikra kapara hoysa mitzad hagoyrol hamshacha mibal haratzin v'zesh shehutzruchu gam Mesiras Nefesh re'ela kaman siftas. Later we're going to get into this idea of where Mesiras Nefesh fits in here. So the Rebbe he asks, seemingly what says in Torah is a contradiction. Here we're saying that Purim itself atones. In Torah, he says, the Alter Rebbe says that Purim atoned because of Mesiras Nefesh. So do you need Mesiras Nefesh for atonement of Purim or not? So Rebbe says you could say that even having said that you need Mesiras Nefesh, but the main part of the atonement comes from the day itself, not from the Mesiras Nefesh. As we'll say later, he said Vadayin Tzarchi and still requires some further analysis. And he says that inside we say over here that the Kapara of Yom Kippur of Purim has no limitations, and therefore Yom Kippur is like Purim, right? So he says here, note 30, Lahar Mesefer Sichas Torah Shalom, Shagam B'Hagerel Atzmei Yeshchiluk Ben Hagerel Yom Kippurim V'Hagerel De Purim. Ayin Sham. Over there, the Rebbe Rashab talks about also the difference. He says Purim, that Yom Kippur is like Purim, and he says that even within the actual practical application of the Geirul, the way it was done, is also different. So here we're talking about, we've mentioned that Yom Kippur, the lot was only a component of the Avodah of Yom Kippur. There's a lot going on. One of the things was also a lottery, whereas Purim, the whole day is Purim. We said that our opening question here in the Maimer is that the day is called Purim. It seems that's the significance of the entire day. Over there he says, even there, with regard to the lot of Yom Kippur, so the lot was with regard to whether a goat is going to... He's talking about here, on Purim, the lottery was about the Jewish people themselves. He talks about other distinctions, but there you see that Purim, the lottery, the stakes, not just that the stakes were higher, but we're talking about it in a much broader spectrum than when we're talking about the lottery of Yom Kippur. Okay. So, Okay, so before we continue here, just what does it mean? We said that lots, when you're mamshech from Baal Haratza, and that's you have atonement. Also, we said over here that Purim, through joy, we bring about atonement, right? So what does all that mean? So when we talk about Purim, we talk about, let's say, tshuva. Whenever you think about tshuva, you think about something very serious, something solemn. Tshuva is always, there's sadness involved. Right, well, there's a way, there's a method to it. Even when it says that tshuva ilah is mitoich simcha, right, so we know that there's different levels of tshuvas. There's a level of tshuva that comes with joy, but even that joy, the joy is a component of it. It's not that the joy is the tshuva, right? Whereas on Purim, the atonement is from the joy itself. So what does that mean? So when you talk about tshuva, that's already where a person has to think about their sin. You have to think about what you did. You have to regret what you did. There's obviously sadness or shame that goes along with it. You have to go through that whole process. And then you come about reaching that space of Baal Haratzon where you can be atoned for the sin. But on Purim, what's joy? When a person is happy, when a person has joy, so it lifts your spirits. It lifts you to a place, right, where you're higher than everything, than all the nitty gritty of the negative things that a person has done, his past misdeeds. It says about what's the mitzvah of Purim? We actually discussed this a lot last year in a different way. But talking about that the mitzvah of Purim is that you drink so much that you don't know the difference between Arur, Haman, and Baruch Mordechai, right? So the Rebbe asks, how is it possible that on Purim you should the whole point of celebrating Purim with joy is to celebrate that Arur, Haman, and Baruch Mordechai. So how do you celebrate it by not knowing the difference? What does that mean? The Rebbe strengthens the question by bringing from Pesach, the laws of Pesach. It says that on Pesach, a person, or before Pesach, the person has to search for chametz. So we're worried, if you're going to search for chametz, aren't you going to come to eat the chametz? Right? If you didn't do b'dik, you have to search for chametz. So he says, why? So the halacha is that no, if you're searching for chametz, you're not going to eat it because the whole point is you're searching to destroy it, right? So how is it possible that on Purim you're drinking to celebrate Arur, Haman, and Baruch Mordechai, and you're going to drink so much that you're not going to know the difference? So if you're not going to know the difference, then you're not drinking for Purim. Then it's not Purim celebration. It's just alcoholism. It's not a celebration of Purim. If that's the result, yeah. Just like a person who's searching for chametz and ends up finding chametz and eating it on Pesach, there's a proper search for chametz. Something was missing there. Something was wrong. So what's the point? So Chassidus explains that it's not that you don't know the difference between Arur, Haman, and Baruch Mordechai. The point is you get to such a place where Arur, Haman, and Baruch Mordechai is essential. It's not that Haman is bad and Mordechai is good, and therefore Haman is cursed and Mordechai is blessed. But you get to a point where essentially that's how it is. That, in other words, you're reaching that level of Baal Haratzon, where in that level of the Eibishter, that's what it is essentially. They can't be in any other way. So that's what Purim is. That's the meaning of the Simcha of Purim and why it's greater even than Yom Kippur.
There's nothing that you can do whether you believe it or not. It's there no matter what. It's like a foundation.
In other words, when it says Ad lo yada, what does it mean lo yada? There's if you look at Mordechai and Haman, one is wicked and one is holy, one is righteous. So it's obvious who's blessed and who's cursed, right? But that's rational. What we're saying is that on Purim yet you can reach a level where Haman is cursed and Mordechai is blessed, not because of any rationale. Not because this one's good and this one's bad, but because essentially this is cursed and this is blessed. Why is that? Because that's what the Eibishter wants. That's what the Eibishter chose. In other words, we talk about it, let's bring it all the way back around. Why is it that when you reach the level of Baal Haratzon, so there's atonement. There you have atonement. Why is that? So seemingly we could say, we said before, because it doesn't matter there. What you did doesn't matter. So therefore you could be forgiven. But is that really the case? You can't say such a thing. You can't say that. It says that kol mitzvahs misyachsim ala atzmos, all mitzvahs are rooted. They all trace you back, they lead you back to the essence of Hashem. So if there's a place, if in the essence of Hashem it doesn't matter, so they don't lead you there. They lead you to a lower level, the level that's connected to Ishtalshalos. What does it mean that in the essence of Hashem that you find the mitzvahs? So here you have the idea of what the real meaning of goyim. We're soon going to separate between, we're going to make a distinction between goyrel, lots, and bechira, and choice. But now, before we get to that, let's lump them together, okay, for just to clarify this point. Whenever somebody wants something, you choose something, there's a reason you choose it, right? So could you say that you exercise free will? Real, true free will. What does it mean that you have free will? If I have something that's good and something that's bad and I choose the good thing, is that really a free choice? No. Why? Because the goodness of this thing compelled me to choose it. Right? This is for Mandy. The goodness of the thing compels you to choose it. So is it a choice? Yes, you made a choice, but is it really true choice? Is it the thing itself determines or forces your hand? Right? Or say a person that's an emotional person or a materialistic person. So something that's more materialistic, something that's more enjoyable to his more core senses would be more appealing to him than to sit and meditate, or to think about something, because that's his nature. So that's what he chooses. Somebody who's more intellectual and is into ideas rather than things, he's going to choose that path. Why? Because that's what's good for him. That's what's going to force him to choose that thing. It says even that a person who's a rational person, his intellect forces him to do something a certain way. It compels him to do it. If you're a rational person, you're going to act rationally. To act irrationally goes against, that's something that's difficult. It forces your hand. But then you have something that's not, it's not good or bad for any, necessarily for a purely objective reason. But you have something that's your nature. You naturally like something. So, for instance, even a natural love that a parent has for a child, right? So you could say, your friends, you can choose based on their qualities, based on your personality, their personality. You're a good person, I'm going to like you. You're not a good person, I'm not going to like you, right? Your kid, whether they're good or bad, you love them. It's because it's an inborn natural love. But here too, that's something that's natural, and so therefore is forced on you. You don't choose to love your child. You have no choice, right? You're stuck with them for better or worse. It's something that's it's since it's part of your nature, it's something that's compelled, right? So on the level of chachma, right, the thing itself determines whether you choose it or not. On the level beyond chachma, the level of ratzin, that transcendent level, right, of will, even there, your choice is compelled by the thing. The thing determines whether you should choose it or not, essentially. So where do you have real, true free will? Only somewhere where the thing it doesn't exist. So let me put it in other terms. $1, takes up a certain amount, is significant compared to $10. It's less significant compared to 100, and less significant to 1,000, right? But it's still significant, right? Whatever, to a greater degree, to a lesser degree, it matters. But what about to an infinite amount, to infinity? $1, $1 million, $1 billion, none of that matters. It's insignificant, right? So there's a positive connection between finite numbers, let's say. There's a certain degree you can measure the distance between them or the significance, the amount they take up. But then there's the relationship between something finite and something infinite, which is that there's no relationship, right? There's no relationship, but still it's something. It's still it's significant in its insignificance, right? So there's a level of godliness where mitzvahs, Abraham puts himself into hishtalshelus, puts himself into a defined sort of limited space, and over there you do better, you're closer. You do worse, you're further. Based on what you do, there's that value. But then there's a level of imtzadakta matitan l'Rabbi. There's the Abraham is transcendent, where everything is equal, everything's the same. Light and darkness are the same. There's no difference. Even there, if a person commits a sin, you still have to do tshuva. Why? Because you're still going against the will. So there's his will that's beyond. But if you follow the will, then you're accepted. If you don't, then you're not. So even if the connection there is a negative one, but there's still some kind of connection. Or let's put it in other terms, there's a level of God, let's say Mamalakam, the way the Eibishter is connected to reality, where obviously reality, creation, is significant. Then there's a level of the Eibishter as he's totally transcendent, totally beyond creation, where creation is insignificant, right? But what about in the Eibishter's essence, in God's essence? Is the world significant or insignificant? In the essence of Hashem, is the world significant or not? The answer, it depends. If he chooses it, then it's significant. If he doesn't choose it, it's non-existent. Since it's there's nothing other than Hashem, so you can't even say that the world's not significant. Because to say it's not significant is to create a connection, a relationship between him and the world, even in the negative sense. Right? So there's like chiyuv and shlila. There's the positive and there's the negative. Either way, it's a relationship. One's a positive relationship, one's a negative relationship, but it's still there's some kind of connection. But where there's nothing, you can't say anything. Right? So in Baal Haratzin, in his will, in his essence. So if he chooses something, what's compelling him to choose it? Himself. There's nothing outside of him that's compelling him to choose it. Because there is nothing else. So if he chooses it, it's completely from within. It's completely self-generated choice. And the result of that is what? That now, if the thing doesn't exist, and he desires it, he chooses it, and since it's non-existent, not even in a negative way, that it's distant from it, it doesn't exist. He sort of desires it into existence. So then now its significance is infinite. Its significance is essential. True, he could desire at the same time to not want it, and then it doesn't anymore. But once he desires it, right, or once he chooses it, so now its significance is essential, is rooted in the essence. So in the Eibishter, there's a level of what he wants, and there's a level that what he doesn't want. When we go from the bottom up, so there's something that's good, there's something that's bad. The Eibishter wants good, he doesn't want bad, right? But if you flip it around the other way, why is something good, why is something bad? Because that's what he wants. So in other words, it's not that he wants something good because it's good, it doesn't want something bad because it's bad. Because he wants it, that's what makes this good, that's what makes that bad. So it's a whole different way of even understanding good and evil, right? But the point is that the choice is something that's not compelled by anything outside of himself. Does this make any sense? A little bit of sense? So that's what with the joy of Purim, what happens? You reach a point where Arur, Haman, and Baruch Mordechai essentially, not because Haman is bad and Mordechai is good. You have to reach beyond reason. We can't understand even what's the question? Arur, Haman, and Baruch Mordechai. Of course, Arur, Haman, and Baruch Mordechai, right? The joy of Purim though takes you to a space where even beyond any reason, right, to like this or not like that, this is blessed and this is cursed. Right? And that's where true atonement comes. Okay, that we need to actually, how this works, how this relates to actual atonement is already harder to understand. But already we understand now that you can't say that you reach a level. Tshuva means you reach a level where your averos don't matter. Chas v'sholom. Your averos matter essentially. So if so, how does kapara work? Okay, so that we ran out of time, I think, to explain exactly how that works. But the point is, okay, so that needs further explanation. But the point is that atonement comes from that level of Baal Ratzin that's not affected from the thing itself. It's all from within himself. We'll maybe continue this point next, if we still remember this line of reasoning. We'll get there, otherwise we'll continue. Back to the moment.